the world's longest road, which runs from southern Argentina to northern Alaska, 14,000 miles, 2 continents.
Wow.
But I'd only ever cycled 20 miles before I applied for the world record. I didn't want to be smuggling people across borders. So I said, look, I fancy doing a world record. And it was about a month before my 40th birthday. So I don't mean to sound arrogant. I know I talked about earlier, it can only be experience of experiences. I knew I had the mental fortitude and resilience and endurance from my time in the special forces. I just had to apply that in a sport I'd never done before.
Today on the podcast, we have Dean Stott. He wrote a book called Relentless. And he is the guy, he actually makes, and I said this earlier before we even started, he makes Dave Goggins look like a Girl Scout. Literally, I'm not even joking. He is, all your stuff, like he's a British, you are like a James Bond. Like you're a British was it MI7, MI6? What do you call it?
MI6 is international, MI5 is homeland. So MI6 is equivalent to the CIA, yes.
Okay, so someone like you, I pretend that I'm a complete moron when it comes to this stuff, even though I'm obsessed with people like you. There's the Green Berets, there's the Marines, there's a MARSOC,
yeah.
MARSOC? Okay,
yeah.
Sorry. There's obviously the Delta Force, Special Forces. So where are you in the hierarchy? Are you like the top, the tippy top, like tier 1? Where are you in that whole thing?
So I was in the Special Boat Service, which is tier 1 Special Forces. So in the UK, we have the Special Boat Service and the Special Air Service.
Right,
and
the SBS and the
SAS, yeah. And so unlike here in the US, where you have Delta Force and SEAL Team 6, which is our counterparts, which are tier 1, and they're 2 separate selection courses, 2 selection processes.
Wait, so Delta in the US we have Delta Force, you said, and SEAL Team 6,
so
and they're different.
They're different. So Navy SEALs are classed as tier 2, but the tier 1 is SEAL Team 6. So those SEALs then have to do an additional selection process to get into SEAL Team 6. And the big difference there is that they then do hostage rescues. And you have Delta Force, which also is tier 1. So there was a colonel back in 1977 who came over and spent 2 years with the British SAS. And, he saw the model and came back in 1977 and set up Delta Force. So the UK Special Forces model is where the majority of the Special Forces around the world has sort of stemmed from.
So you guys more badass than the ones in the US, being the Delta Force and the SEAL Team 6?
I don't mean we're more badass. We have more history. We have a lot of history. When you sort of talk about history, like America was formed in the 1700s. Our Royal Marines was formed in 1664. And there was a reason that we came over.
Right.
Yeah. So I think because we've had more history, we've had more conflicts. We've learned what worked, what hasn't worked, and developed our own sort of TTPs, SOPs. Americans have sort of mirrored that as well. And obviously with the more recent conflicts, with the biggest allies to the US is the UK. The first phone call that George Bush got after 9/11 was from Tony Blair, and it was like,
right,
we're behind you.
I remember that,
yeah.
Right.
And we've always been there. And so that cross-pollination, as we call it, training, we just learn from each other. So I think, SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, SAS and SBS, they're now on par.
But you said the tier 2, you're tier 1. So you're still above. You're high in like hierarchy, you're still above. Like SBS.
Our roles and responsibilities are slightly different.
Don't be humble and polite. We need to know the facts. So I'm going to say you're just being nice. So you are, if you're considered tier 1 and that's tier 2, you are technically higher than them.
That's it. Yeah. Everyone likes to use the word special forces. It gets thrown out there quite a lot. Yeah. Everyone's in the special forces.
Like what's Dave Goggins? What level is he?
So he was a Navy SEAL. So he was tier 2.
Tier 2.
I think, I haven't really read his book, but I did know that he went for Delta Force selection and didn't pass. So he didn't pass the tier 1 selection process.
Right, I heard that too.
Yeah, so he was classed as tier 2, and the big differentiator between tier 2 and tier 1 is I always see like the tier 2 guys. The selection process, you're getting shouted at. The instructors are screaming and bawling at you, and they're giving you whether it's motivation or not. Tier 1 is slightly different. No one shouts at you. You have to be self-motivated. You know, and you're more of a thinking soldier. No one will shout at you on selection.
Really?
Yeah, they don't need to shout. It's hard enough as it is. They tell you what you need to do. And you also need to be able to retain information as well. You know, they'll tell you once, they'll tell you twice. If they tell you a third time, then you're not the right person for it. So everyone has this perception that, you know, tier 1 special forces are 6'8", you know, massive and breathe fire. You know, they don't. They're actually very nimble, very agile, but they're thinking soldiers. They can retain information, and they don't need someone screaming and shouting them to motivate them. They have to be self-motivated, because the majority of times they may be in situations where they are on their own.
Wow.
And you don't have that person shouting at you. And so you need to find that inner strength to push forward. But the main differentiator in the roles and responsibilities is the hostage rescue. You know, that changes completely when you're going on to oil rigs, cruise ships, hotels. You know, you need to know exactly what you're doing, where the rest of the team are, and yeah, it's just that extra level of professionalism. So
basically, then, oh my God, I've got so many questions. So basically, the Navy SEALs, the tier 2s, does that mean that's the main indicator of like the main difference is it's more, are they not as self-motivated then as people like you?
No, it's not that at all. It's a stepping stone. So everyone will probably start.
But then you got to. It's like sharpening the knife just a 0.1% more or 0.2%.
That's it as well. You know, some guys will be happy where they are, and some guys will be looking for that extra. And there'll be ones that are shining. And you know, for the UK, majority of the guys that go SAS and SBS come from the Parachute Regiment and the Royal Marine Commandos, which are our tier 2. So tier 2 is almost like the start point. You know, and then you start carving yourself out. You know, it's not for everyone. I had so many friends who were more than capable of going tier 1, but they didn't want to take that leap. You know, it just wasn't for them. I'm so
interested. So basically, okay, so you're a tier 1 special forces officer. You're also a world record breaker. Now you do security. I want you to start from the beginning because there's so much information. And you're so nice, and it seems like you're so like sweet, and and then like you're like this like animal in this other world. Like the fact that you're able to do some of the things that you did in your book, it feels like it was like a fictional book. I can't even believe that's like real stuff that humans could actually do.
Yeah, my wife actually jokes. One of the things you said that you look quite sweet. You know, one of the things she did say about the SBS and SAS guys is they're so humble, they're so polite, they don't really swear as much. You know, everyone in Hollywood has this perception of special forces guys in a biceps and bullets, I call it. Covered in tattoos and swearing and cursing. Whereas my wife's like, no, you guys are very, very humble. You have humility. You're gentlemen. But we know when we can switch on and switch off.
Right.
You know, and that's another key trait of tier 1 special forces. You know, we go out, we do a job, and we come back. We can differentiate between being on a mission and being at home. And some people really struggle with that as well.
So this SBS, okay, so what is the, and by the way, before I even ask you about that, so then like the Green Berets and all those, are they considered tier 2 as well?
Yeah, they're tier 2 special forces. Okay. They're all special forces in their own right. Yeah,
tier 2.
And tier 2. And then they'll have their own. We don't have, you know, I do a lot with the Honor Foundation in the US, which is a special forces transition program when they're leaving the special forces in the US to civilian street. And I wasn't aware that there was 59,000 special forces in the US. You know, that's probably the size of the UK Army.
Wow.
Yeah. So there is a lot. Yeah. And so they you know, certain special forces units will have their own areas of responsibility. You know, I understand, like, and I may be incorrect, 7th Special Forces concentrates on South America. Certain SEAL team groups will only concentrate on the mountain and the Arctic and the desert. So because you have a larger force, they specialize in certain areas only, whereas we don't have that. And so we sort of like the jack of all trades. We do a little bit of skiing, we do a little bit of desert stuff.
That's so crazy.
So, but you do have such an amazing and large force that you can sort of like, you know, carve them for that area of responsibility, which we don't have that.
So what is that? So the SBS that you were in,
yes,
which is the most coveted hard thing to get into. Why? Like, what is it? Like, what's
ours, we have the special air service and the special boat service. Special air service was primarily, you had to be in the army to go to the special air service. And the special boat service, which is the Navy Special Forces, but ironically, there's only ever been one Navy guy pass over the years.
Really?
It's all come from the Royal Marines. But I was actually in the army. And so for me, I could only go special air service. I spent 8 years in Free Commando Brigade doing commando reconnaissance with the Royal Marines and the commandos. And I was also the senior dive instructor for the army. So I loved being in the water. So I wanted to go SBS. But unlike here in the US, where you have SEAL Team 6 have their own selection process and you have Delta Force have theirs, ours is actually joint.
Right.
So there is no easier option. So I decided actually I wanted to go to the SBS. And the SBS were losing Royal Marine recruits to the SAS because not everyone likes diving. You know, it's quite an alien environment. And so much to discuss with my friends in the SAS, you know, I volunteered to go SBS. And they tell you to be the grey man on selection. Try and blend in. Don't stand out for the right or wrong reasons. And eventually you will be exposed as the numbers dwindle. You know, we started with 208 pass, 6 months later, and we only have 2 courses a year. So you can imagine, we don't have many people passing. I was the grey man for 2 minutes. As soon as I turned up on day one, the instructors shouted my name out and they're like, "Why are you going SBS?" And I was like, I like diving. And I'm like, that's not a good enough excuse. But I believed in my own abilities. Yes, I was above the radar, but I went on. Me and a friend of mine became one of the first army guys to go SBS, and now 15% of the SBS come from the army. So we do a lot together, the SAS and the SBS, because we don't have big numbers. We have to combine.
So can you walk us through the actual training or the process to become an SBS person? Yeah,
so we have a 6-month selection process. The first month is called the Hills. And basically you're wearing a backpack or a Bergen, as we call them. And you start on day one and they weigh about 55 pounds. And you get on a truck and then the instructor will give you a grid and you just have to run to that grid up and over the mountains, whatever is in between you and that grid point. And you just keep doing this all day till you do about 25, 30 kilometers a day. But you have to be moving at 4 kilometers an hour, which doesn't sound that fast. But that's 4 kilometers an hour when you're looking at a map from above. So if there's a mountain in the way, you've got to get through that mountain. And so a lot of people who are quite poor navigational will probably just go straight and route, whereas actually you have to read the land and see the best route. It might be a bit further, but it might be quicker. So this goes on for about 4 weeks. And then on the last week, it's timed. You have to come in on time. But you can imagine the wastage you got, guys who realize they're not fit enough, guys that are sort of self-analyzing, guys that are getting injured. So people are dropping off. And then on the test week, you have to come in on those times. If you don't, you get a red card, you get 1 warning, and then second, you're off. So you probably lose a good 50 to 60% of the people
on that one
just
week.
On that hills phase. And no one even knows your name at this point. But on the last week, you come in on those times. I think the last day we have to do 30 kilometers. We have 4 hours rest, and we have to do 40 miles in 20 hours and carrying 70 pound minus all your equipment. But as I said, no one's shouting at you. No one is saying anything. No one even knows your name. You're just known as a number. And then you finish that, and it's quite a big hurdle passing the hills phase. And then the chief instructor comes in and said, "Right, selection starts now." And we're like, "Really?"
So that's not even the beginning.
That's not even the beginning.
That's just what is that even called? Just it's just so you can be in the room, or I don't understand.
Yeah, I think you've shown them that you can be self-motivated. Right. You have the fitness. Now we're going to start carving away. Now that's the great thing about selection. It's not, you could be the fittest person in the world, but if you can't, you run over the mountains, but if you can't operate that radio, then you're not the right person for you. So for them, that's just a box ticking, right? They have the physical attributes and they have the endurance. Now we need to start. Now we start carving away. So we have in our special forces, we don't use the same weapon systems as the rest of the British military. So we're having to learn about new weapon systems, new communications. And the way that the special forces do tactics is very different from what I call the Green Army. So you're having to learn all these new sort of skill sets. And so, sometimes when you're a bit older, now I joined quite late, I was a sergeant. And so I probably built up some bad habits.
How old were you?
I was 28 when I did my selection.
And you were there for a long time.
I did 6 years in them, and I got injured, unfortunately.
I know.
Yeah. So,
we'll talk about that in a second.
So I was late in my career, but I was happy to learn new skills. And then we go to the jungle for 6 weeks. The jungle of all the environments is the hardest environment to operate in. You can't even see 10 meters in front of you. So those that have managed to get through the hills phase by following people,
right,
navigation wise, will get caught out in the jungle.
So how long was it? I'm sorry, you said a week was the first phase?
So 4 weeks for the hills.
Oh, sorry, 4 weeks for the hills.
Then we have 2 weeks of learning the weapons and doing what we call section attacks and communication. But everything is live firing. We don't fire blanks. Everything is live ammunition from that day onwards.
Stop it.
Because when you're in the jungle, you can hardly see the guy to your left and right. So it's understanding you have to be safe with your weapon. You have to be able to communicate. And because I always think, and I think it's a great thing to do, because when you're firing blanks, people realize that actually no one's going to get hurt. When you're firing live ammunition, your situation awareness is heightened, and
way
it has
higher.
to be.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for safety things. They're looking for things to pick you up on. And everyone thinks being special forces, you need to be able to do triple backward somersault and throw ninja stars. And it's nothing like that. It's actually basic soldiering done well. And that's it. They're not asking for anything else of it other than being a basic soldier, because people nowadays like to take shortcuts.
Yeah.
And so
great.
Actually doing the basics is actually hard. And so that's all
with
they're
anything in life, by the way,
Yeah.
not only in that. Like, everyone's always looking for shortcuts in everything.
in everything.
And it's always the basics that get you to the finish line.
And true. And the instructors now will also start targeting you as individuals, and they'll start playing mind games. They'll start telling you that you're not good enough to be in their unit. Save your time. Let's save the next few months of pain. Just go home. Your family will be missing you. And that does eat away at some of the guys. Some guys generally believe that. But I always remember the chief instructor saying, look, let us fail you. Don't fail yourself. We will tell you when to go. Don't you make that decision. But every day the helicopter would come in. You're in the schoolhouse, and the instructor said, anyone want to go? And the guys would just be leaving. And I'm like, they were good operators. But it's one of the ones for me, I did see guys leave, but that gave me more of a confidence boost. I thought, well, I'm doing something right, because I didn't want to be leaving. But underneath the canopy in the jungle can be quite claustrophobic for some people.
What's happening in the jungle for 6 weeks? What are you guys doing besides shooting at?
The majority of stuff is the shooting. It's been coming under ambush. What you do.
But can't you get shot then? Can't someone shoot you by accident?
There's been incidents where guys have ricochets, instructors have been hit, but it's just, that is part and parcel of being in the special forces. Everything has to be live firing. So we do patrolling, we do camp attacks, we do ambushes, close target reconnaissance.
What is this? Oh, okay. I saw that it's in a book. I don't even know what those words mean. I understand one of the words you said.
Yeah.
Pretend like I said, pretend I'm 4 years old.
Okay.
Okay. What would you say? Explain it again.
So a camp attack would be if we wanted to hit a camp in the jungle.
A camp attack, I got that one. Yeah.
So obviously dominate the camp. An ambush would be, that one. Yeah, we got that. And a close target reconnaissance is when you're trying to get information on a target. So if you were looking to do a camp attack, but you needed to get close, you needed to get some information from that target, which helps you formulate your plan. It means you need to get close to that target. So you work in 2-man teams, and you're just literally on your belt buckle gathering as much information from there. And then you go back, and then that will help you and your team formulate your plan.
So how do you practice that? Does your instructor team you guys up in pairs and say, go now? And are there people who pretend to be these people, or how does it work?
No, yeah, they'll team you up in pairs, and they will teach you everything from fresh. So close. I spent 8 years in 3 Commander Brigade and Brigade Reconnaissance Force, and
right.
that was our bread and butter, was doing these type of jobs. but the special forces do it slightly different. And so, I had to sort of learn their methods and just what they were doing. Don't take shortcuts. And so they would do that, and they would mix the groups up as well. They would, see how you work in teams. A lot of the guys, as I said, come from the parachute regiment and the Royal Marine Commandos and the commando units. So that's a lot of that focus, and their selection process is about being part of a team. So the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, the Rangers you touched on, they focus more on teamwork. So they know that you have that sort of capability. But in the special forces, it's not rare for you to be taken from one team to another. And so you need to be able to get on with everyone. So they do that. They see how you merge and
play with others.
Yeah.
You get along with others, or like
get along
a team
with others.
player.
You've got to be a team player, and there's no room for knife sharpeners, as the chief instructor said. We don't want these people on the bed, sharpening a knife. You have to be part of a team. And as we touched on as well, we used to work with other units like SEAL Team 6 as well. We would be working with them. So you have to be able to get on with that. But also, they're also testing it what you like as an individual. You also have to be. There's going to be times you're operating on your own, and you can't be reliant on that team.
So your temperament, it sounds like, is really important. So that means like probably a lot of people who are at your level, they all have your similar temperament, right? Like that's the truth, right? Because that's what you have a lot of humility, you're soft-spoken, you're nice. Like I guess that's part of it. Like you're like the strong silent type, basically.
Yeah, the strong silent type, but you know when to switch on and switch off. So when the instructors used to come at you and shout at you, because I remember one day turning up on the range and I hadn't even been down the range yet, and this instructor came at me, screaming and shouting in my face, telling me if I'd poor weapon handling, and if I was to do it again, I was on the next helicopter out. But he was waiting to see what my reaction was. I actually hadn't even been on the range yet. And so I just said, yes, staff, agreed with what he said and just went on. And I sort of knew that this was part of the game. But you do see other guys reacting.
Right.
Because they are pride and they're proud of what they believe that they didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, no, it's a game. It's a game.
Okay, so then what's the next? So you pass the jungle and then what happens?
So you pass the jungle. So the jungle, when you finish the jungle, the instructors get together and they decide who's passed and who's not, but they don't tell you for another 4 days yet. And so you're there in Brunei almost self-analyzing the last 6 weeks. And some guys have been given the nod already by instructors.
Nod like you're out or you're in?
Yeah, saying, yeah, you've done enough. And some guys haven't. And so some guys are like, did you get the nod? Like, yeah, did you? No. And so people...
It's a mind game.
It's the mind game. It's a mind game. So I did get the nod, but I still wasn't happy until I went back. And what I like about selection as well is that there are individuals that will clash. There are people who won't get on with each other. And I hear it, the instructor didn't like me, so I failed. But what they actually do on selection, on the last 10 days, they swap the instructors. So if there is any animosity between the student and the instructor, they've got a separate set of eyes. So they can't use that excuse for them. So, but yeah, those last 4 days, they fly back to Hereford and we spend 4 days and we play football and, walk along the beach and, clean our equipment, get ready to go back. But you are self-analyzing and wondering whether you've done enough. And then you go back and then you have an interview with a training officer and he tells you whether you've passed that phase or not. And I saw some great guys leave and you're like, although I had been given the nod, I was still very nervous until they said. And then once you get given a nod, you turn up on Monday. I mean, it's the continuation training the next 3 months.
What's the next phase?
So we do your parachuting. We have to go away, do our parachuting. We do SEER.
What does that mean? That's how you got injured later. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's how I got injured later, yeah.
But tell me what that means, parachuting.
So we would do squares parachute. So we jump out the back of a tailgate of a C-130 and then it's directional. You can fly the parachute to the target area. So some of the guys may have come from the parachute regiment, but they're used to round parachutes, which don't really steer.
So let me get this straight. Hold on a minute. So the next phase is parachuting. So you jump out of a plane essentially, and you're but you're controlling the parachute. So it's different than skydiving.
But no, it's like skydiving. You have the same sort of canopy. It's a bit bigger.
Okay.
But you're just steering it. You have more directional control of where you're going.
How high do you do this?
So we do the hey-ho up to 15,000 feet before And then lads that go on to do halo courses when they go to the SS and SBS go up to like 28,000 feet on oxygen.
Have you done that?
No, I've not done the halo. I've done the hey-ho, which is the 15,000 feet.
So why didn't you do the halo 28,000?
Because I wasn't in air troop. So when you go to your unit, there's different troops that you go to which specialize in certain areas.
Got it. Okay.
And I ended up in boat troop because of my diving ability.
Diving.
Yeah. And so we go do a.
How long is that, by the way, the parachute?
That's about 2 or 3 weeks, depending on the weather. We went out to Cyprus and did that because the weather's a lot better than the UK.
So you just jump out all day, just jump.
All day, yeah. Get your qualifying jumps. So basically, what they're doing by the end of selection is they're giving you enough skill sets that you can slot in to your unit, and then all the additional skills they will start carving that out of you. So they just
you're very versatile though, versus like that's what's interesting. It sounds like the other, like the SEAL team, the Delta Force, they're very specific. You guys can do everything.
Yeah, we have to do everything. You know, I'm a military ski instructor. I'm a yacht master. I'm a dive master. You know, we the stuff that you have to. Because we're not reliant on other units to support us. We need to be self-sufficient. So, you just learn all these new skills. You know, we're not experts in one, but we can
do all.
We can do all. Yeah, if called upon. So we
Wait, I have a question for you. And not to interrupt, but like so you remember that movie Mission Impossible, like the last Mission Impossible, or maybe didn't it? Yeah. Remember Tom Cruise jumped out of a plane and it was like a big deal because he did his own stunt and it was like really high.
Yeah.
How high was that?
I don't know. I never watch Mission Impossible.
Oh God, I forgot you don't watch TV.
I don't really watch much TV.
Oh, okay. So he had to wear an oxygen tank.
So anything above, so it would be above 15,000 feet.
Yeah, it was
because anything above
it.
15,000 feet, you have to have oxygen.
Okay.
So yeah, that could be anywhere between 15 and maybe 28,000 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like a big. Okay, sorry, I digress. Okay, go on. So then you pass the parachute.
Pass that, and then the next one, which is pass and fail, is survival, evasion, resistance, extraction. So you go on the run for a week with no food. You have to cover 20 to 30 kilometers a day, and you meet agents, and they start giving you your next grid references. But at the end of the week, you then get captured by a hunter force and you get interrogated for 36 hours. So you then go through the whole interrogation process.
For 36 hours.
For 36 hours. But because you've been on the run for a week, you're depleted of food and water. You know, you're not fully engaged, you're not fully switched on. And that's what they want. They want fatigue. They want you to be tired. They put you in stress positions and then you get pulled in and then you have various interrogation processes from good cop, bad cop, ways of being able to trick you to do things. And
like what? That's what I want to know. I want to know these details.
So for example, one, you know, if I was to, your pen, if I was to give you your pen,
okay.
You know, nowadays, because of, you can edit TV, you know, I could give you a bit of paper and I can give you a pen, you know, you hold that pen, you know, they could make out that you've signed something, you know, but what you do is if you give me the pen, if they offer you the pen, you hold it like that. So there's no way that they can say that you'd sign that. But you have agreed to what they've asked for, which is to hold the pen.
Right.
And then, for example, if you give me the bit of paper,
oh my God, so
you know, they'll tell you to, you know, read from this. So I'm sort of reading from this. But what you need to be careful of is what's actually written on the other end. You know, yeah, we're guilty of dropping bombs on women and children. It's just little things like that you've got to be conscious of, that they can't be manipulated or...
So what do you do when you grab the paper then? What do you do?
So what I would do is I'd see what was on the back first.
And what if there was something on the back? What would you do?
So I just wouldn't read it. I would hold it down, you know, so they can't film it. So they're just looking at ways of tricking you. I mean, you have the good cop, bad cop, where someone comes in and is like, look, I'm trying to help you, you know, don't want the other person coming in and shouting and, you know. But then they also teach you that at any opportunity you see an opportunity to eat or drink, you know, grab it. I remember I came in and they ripped the sandbag off my head and there was a whole bowl of jelly beans. So I just grabbed the jelly beans, threw them in my mouth, and I got hit and they put the sandbag over my head, but I did the right thing. You know, I was trying to get food where I could. I mean, another situation was, you know, that they came in and my blindfold was slightly up so I could see the room. They'd left the room and left us in there, but there was a table with sandwiches on. So the best thing for me to do was actually go grab the sandwiches and start feeding my friends. You know, they came in and screamed and shouted at us, but we did
the right thing.
do the right thing. Yeah. So so there's all the.
Oh my God, this is like Jedi mind tricks. Like you have to be really smart though. People don't understand. Like it seems to me, it's not now talking to you, even reading your book. Like it's like so mind boggling, but the physicality is seriously like very small. It's a big part, but bigger part is like your mental strength, like true mental strength.
And that's what they're not testing for the physical. It is the mental. And that's the big difference between, and that's why they deplete your food and water, because you're at your lowest point, and see if you are still able to switch on. You're still able to understand what's going on or read the situation.
Were you, by the way, like, okay, so it was only 36 hours, and did they tell you before it's only going to be 36 hours, or do they leave it like open-ended? Like,
they leave it open-ended, but you know from your friends that have been there before that you've done it. But for me, I'd done this course before when I was in the Commando Recce's.
Right.
And so I'd experienced it before, and I knew what was coming. But they put you to sleep. They lay you down on the floor, and you sort of fall asleep, and you think you've been asleep for like 5 minutes, and they pull you up. But you actually been asleep for an hour. But the purpose of the exercise is, the enemy has changed long before. Geneva Convention years ago was name, rank, number, blood group, date of birth, religion, and that's all you ever said.
Right. Wow.
But now the enemy's changed. They won't. They'll just maybe just kill you.
Do they beat you up when this 36 hour?
They do rough you up. I think it's an excuse for the instructors sometimes to get their
Do they punch you in the face? What do they do?
Some guy, the course before is there was a situation in Iraq where 2 SAS guys got captured by the police and got roughed up. So they introduced that on our course as well. Right at the end of the course, and the course before, guys had broken nose, lost their teeth, and so because you have to have that shock of capture. Although you sort of know, like, the government's spending millions of pounds training me, I'm sure they're not going to kill me.
Right.
But you start playing tricks on your mind and stuff like that. But the aim of is to befriend your captive, is give them enough information to keep you alive, because the difference between days of old with name, rank, number, blood group, date of birth, religion, we didn't have Google.
Right.
Now you have Google. So
right.
There's certain things you can talk about which are on Google anyway, you're not giving away. But there's certain things that I can't disclose that you just don't talk about. And so it's knowing, can I talk about it? Can't I talk about it? Is that going to help me? Will the captive see me as a human being? And not the enemy, and that's what you're doing. All you're trying to do is delay for the guys to come rescue you, and that's what you want to do. Stay alive as long as possible.
So then, so once you pass that, then are you in?
No.
What?
you then what stands us out from the rest is the counterterrorism, the hostage rescue. Again, that's new weapon systems. That's, in the jungle, or when you're on the battlefield, you can see the battlefield, and in the jungle you can see enough. But when you're in a blacked out building with a respirator, with lasers, and there's hostages and people running around, you need to be able to. That's your situation awareness being, at its peak.
That's 100%.
100%. Do you take that shot? Don't you take the shot? You have to positively ID before you take the shot, and if you're in doubt, you don't take the shot. But because of the nature of it, when we do go loud, as we call it, it's about speed and aggression. You need to get through that ship, that hotel, that aircraft as quick as possible before they start killing hostages, and that's the differentiator between tier 1 and tier 2. And
did they actually? How do they train you for that? If that's the last part of the trading to be an SBS. How long does that last? How do they train you for that?
That's 4 weeks as well. That's 4 weeks, and they just teach you the basics as well. They'll, as I said, they'll just give you enough skill sets that when you go to your squadron, you can slot into the team, and then it's there that they then start evolving and do more tactics with you, learning more skills. You may be an explosive method of entry. You may be the person blowing in the wall. You'll learn all that when you get to SBS. But what they'll do is enough for you to be able to just slot into a team.
Right. But what do they do? You go on a pair. like you get, how do they simulate it, I guess?
So they have buildings, they're called killing houses.
Okay.
They have buildings, they can change the format of the rooms. So you go to some of these ranges and they're all the standard, it's set in one thing. But once you keep going through, you're playing it. So they change it round. And so, they would either have you abseiling down from the helicopter through the roof, whether you're coming in on the vehicles, different ways of coming in, how to clear the rooms, communication, how you talk to the team. Because the majority is done silent. It's all done on touch. The majority of stuff we don't even need to talk. Because once everyone becomes fluid, everyone knows what they're doing. And so for me, if I was at a door, I wouldn't go in until someone squeezed me. And as soon as someone squeezed me, I know we go in. And then the guy opposite, he'll throw a flash crash or a grenade in, and then we just go in. I mean, you're not like waiting for your oppo. You're then on to the next one. It's just about speed and aggression, getting through until what we call jackpot, you find the hostage.
Okay. Amazing. Okay, so then obviously you pass that,
yeah,
and then you become the SBS.
And then you go to the SBS. So the SAS get their beret in the belt, and then we get our beret in the belt, and then we have another 3 months training. We have to then go do our Special Forces diving and our boating course, which is another 3 months. So just when you think you're there, you're like, you now got another 3 months. And because that's the differentiator between the SBS and the SAS is the diving capability. We're able to dive onto targets if need be.
It just okay. This is, and I'm speechless because what is I know you come from a military background, right? But like, can you kind of give me a little bit of like what kind of mindset, what kind of person is able to eat? Like, did you know at a younger age that you had this ability to even be this person?
Not at all. My father was in the military, my grandparents in the military, but it was never forced upon me, to continue that family tradition. I was 5'7" and probably about 140 pounds when I joined the military. I wasn't the figure that I am today.
Look at you now, but you're so crazy fit. And this is, by the way, if you're only listening and not watching, he's insanely fit, but he does no weights. It's all functional.
It's all body weight.
It's all body weight.
It's all body weight. And the reason for that is when I was doing courses in the military, some of the courses, they'll have an entrance test for you to start that course, whether it's the commando course, the diving course, or Special Forces selection. But it was all about pull-ups, dips, press-ups, sit-ups.
Basics.
And running. Yeah, it wasn't about, how much can you curl, how much can you bench press. And so for me, I would always train for that so that I was in my best peak condition to pass that test. But as I went on in my career, there was occasions where I'd see guys who looked amazing.
Yeah.
But they were too big. And they weren't able to do their job. They were that big that they couldn't climb ropes. They couldn't climb out of the rope, out of the jungle. And so for me, they weren't operationally capable. And so for me, it was having the balance of being able to still be able to do my job as well at the end of it. And so for me, it was always the body weight stuff.
And like the functional, like it's true. Like you can go to a gym and do like a push-up machine.
Yeah.
But like I see it all the time and then those people can't even do a push-up.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Because you're relying on a machine or resist. I guess you could do like dumbbells, but it's not the same as your own body weight. That's real strength.
That's real strength. Yeah. And some of the exercises we do in the military is some of the things we actually have to do. For example, like maybe the counter-terrorism diving. We may have to swim 5 kilometers onto a target, and then we have to climb these caving ladders. Using muscles that you can't use in the gym. So it's muscles that are used or engaged when you're doing body weight. And so that's why I just stuck with that.
I mean, like obviously it worked. Okay, so then you're 5'7", 140 pounds. I know your dad. So then like basically then now what happens? You're like you weren't like this strong mind. You didn't have this mental strength just naturally.
I had a competitive streak about it. My father was the army. I wouldn't say football, soccer. The army soccer manager, player, and coach. So a lot of my friends, their fathers, they wore green kit. You know, they went on deployments. They were parachutists or commandos. My dad would come home wearing a tracksuit. And you know, because that was we would call them tracksuit soldiers. Those that maybe not went professional in civilian sector, but then joined the army and then had a career in sport. So there was always that competitive streak from my father. Even on Christmas Day, we would be competing over the ball games and things like that. So there was that competitive nature anyway.
So he wouldn't let you win, right?
He wouldn't let me win. And I'm glad he didn't, you know, because when I did win, I earned that win. And I still do it with my son and my kids now. And, my wife's like, let them win. I was like, no, they will win when they're capable of winning. And it won't be long before they do both beat me.
I totally believe in that also, because it's like, you're not teaching your kids that people are winners. There are winners and losers in life, and you have to work for it if you want to win. If you want to be the best, you have to work for it.
You got to earn it. Yeah, you have to earn it. It shouldn't be given to you. And you'll appreciate it more
100%
when you do get it. But yeah, I actually always wanted to be a fireman as a young boy. But when I left school, there was like 2,000 applicants for one job. It was like in the early 90s. There was a bigger recession at the time, and so that was going on. And then so I went to college, and my father was very strict. He's an old school Scottish sergeant major. So when I was at school, he wouldn't let me go play with my friends unless I did all my homework. So when I went to college, you know, it was like, you know, part-time really. You had free lessons, you know, free periods, which then extended into like not even going to college. And I've always loved surfing since a young boy. And me and my friends went to Newquay in Cornwall on a surfing holiday for 2 weeks, which for me turned out to be 6 months. I just never went back. Long before the mobile phone, my father then came looking for me and found me.
Really?
He found me in a surf shop and was like, right, you've wasted your life. What are you going to do now? And so, you know, there's no point in arguing with my father. You know, I mean, you know, can argue with someone till you're blue in the face. For me, the best course of action was action. And so I told him I would, you know, join the military. And that's when he told me I'd last 2 minutes, which wasn't the words I was expecting, but it was that drive and that fire in the belly to say, okay, well, let's do this. But I never had aspirations. I never even heard of the Special Boat Service when I joined. And so I went to the careers office, and when my father then saw that I was being serious about it, he then sat me down and explained a bit more about the military to me. But he thought I was going to do minimum time. He was like, get as much as you can from the military. He was in the Royal Engineers. And so I joined the Royal Engineers as well. He thought, get a trade and come back out. And I did one course. I did my basic training, and then went on the next course. And I soon realized actually I was one of the lead guys in the group. And then I just looked at the net course, and before I knew it, you know, by the age of 21, I was a para commando diver and a PTI. I had done every arduous course you could in the Royal Engineers.
So you had it really, you actually had it in you, but you had no idea, basically.
I had no idea. But as I was doing these courses, I was physically, you know, in a short period of time, I went from 140 pounds to 200 pounds in probably about 18 months. And I grew 4 inches.
Wow.
But physically and mentally, I was getting stronger. And it was like, well, what next? You know, what is the next thing I could do? And then at 21, I went back as an instructor on the commando course. And that's when it sort of clicked in that, yes, I do have the ability to do this. And I saw friends going off to the special forces. I went on selection first time and I got injured. I tore my lateral meniscus in my knee.
Oh.
And so, but I learned from that. You know, when I was training for that, I was running up and down the mountains with kit on my back. Next time I did it, I made sure that, you know, I wasn't aggravating the knee. And spinning was just coming out, spin bikes.
Yeah, of course.
And I was the senior dive instructor, and I didn't have opportunity to run up the hills. I was running courses myself. And so I would just go on the spin bike for 2 hours a night and just worked on the speed and the strength and just had a backpack on. And so I sort of learnt from my first selection, and that helped me with my second.
What's amazing to me also is that people don't even know what they're capable of, right? Until they put themselves in those situations.
Yeah.
And like, look at you. Like, your dad thought you'd last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You never you wanted to be. You know, you were working in a surf shop, and then you become like the lead and like become like who you are. It's unbelievable. Like people don't want to put themselves, like there's so much self-doubt that people don't even put themselves in those situations to even see what they're made of.
Yeah, exactly. I think, looking back, it's probably reverse psychology.
Yeah.
He said that. But, it's like if Tommy, my son, came to me and said, I want to join the army or the military, words are quite powerful. The fact I'm still talking about it, 28 years later.
Yeah, exactly.
I probably wouldn't tell him those same words. But, for me, I think that's potentially might have been reverse psychology with him.
Like you want to prove yourself to yourself and to him.
Yeah.
It's just, have you ever been captured?
No, thankfully not. No.
Never been captured?
Never been captured.
Can you tell us about like the craziest deployment, the craziest experience that you've ever had?
So, everyone asks, I was very fortunate. I deployed to Middle East, Europe and Africa. There's certain things we can't talk about, for security reasons.
I was trying I wanted you to kind of say it.
One story that's great is it got nothing to do with any being shot at or being blown up. It was a situation where I was dressed up as a local, as a Taliban.
You start the book you talk about this. Yeah.
And, what we would do is we had 3 vehicles. I was in the lead vehicle with my Afghan Terp. And we would drive past an agent in Kandahar. We had to pick up agents. And so my lead vehicle would go by to identify that the person was there. Second vehicle would pick him up. And the third vehicle would make sure there's no follow-up. And so each day we would go into Kandahar. There's no point in planning a route because each day you go in, there's roadblocks all the time. And so this one day, there was a roadblock in front of me which directed me to the right. And so I went down the street, but it was a very narrow street. There's market stall sides both sides, and it was bumper to bumper with traffic. I had a black beard, dressed as a local, but I don't like anything in my eyes, and so I had quite piercing blue eyes. And
you do actually,
yeah, we had makeup on, to brown our skin, and people were knocking on the window and pointing at the vehicle. So my immediate thought was we've been compromised because you shouldn't be there. Your senses are heightened. I shouldn't be in this situation. So you're thinking of the worst, and so all I'm thinking is CNN. Orange boiler suit tonight. And so I speak to my Terp and I said, I think we've been compromised, and he agrees. And so it goes radio silent, we've got internal comms. And so I then get asked questions in my ear, and, you can't really talk. You acknowledge it with beeps and tones, like 2 beeps for yes, 1 for no. And they're like, you happy with the drill? And in my ear, I'm like, yeah. And that was the great thing about Tier 1 Special Forces. No one's going to question your judgment. You're that person. You're the person facing the enemy in front of you, not someone 30 miles away in an ops room.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, you take the lead. And so the initial thing, what I do, there's a weapon called an MP5 Kurtz. It's underneath your seat, and it's got no short barreled, and you just empty the whole magazine into the windscreen, all 30 rounds, and you just drop it. But what that does is gives you time for you to run. It gives you a bit of time. You grab your weapon, you go to the rear of the vehicle, there's an RPG in the vehicle, and you blow up the vehicle because you don't want them having the comms kit. So all this is going on in my head at the time.
You have to think about all of this stuff.
Yeah, you have to sort of remember what you're doing. So I'm like, okay, yeah, happy with that. But as this is happening, my vehicle's slowly nudging forward. And as I go to grab the weapon, thankfully for me, my friend in the second vehicle has just come around the corner, and he's actually seen what's going on. And he's like, stop. So I just dropped the weapon, and he said, your turban's caught in the door. And so for me, I totally misread the situation. I thought because I was in a bad place, everyone was bad, when actually everyone was actually being genuinely nice, telling me that my turban was in the door.
Oh my God.
And so for me, that was my scariest moment. But I use that a lot when I'm guest speaking, how you can misread a situation. People run into a situation and see what they want to see, when in fact, if you just slightly pause and take it all in. And so, so from that day onwards, I made sure that, Hekmat, my guy, made sure my turban was in the door. So it was nothing to do with my eyes. And actually a lot of people in Afghan have blue eyes and have ginger beards because of the Russian war.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Surprisingly, there's a lot. Yeah.
And that was, you're saying, the scariest moment you had?
That was my scariest moment,
things
and
that
I
you've
was
done?
never shot at. Yeah, because I was on my own, and I was also playing out in my head how it could all go wrong. Because literally, if I had engaged that and grabbed the weapon, I was running 17 miles in my flip flops in my gear back to camp to the nearest friendly forces. You're on your own, so it's how it could have played out. But inside, that was when I was most fearful, because when you are in combat, you get that question as well. It's almost like because you've trained and rehearsed. It's so fluid and second nature. You sometimes don't even realize you're only really when you're on the helicopter flying back that you sort of assess what's just happened. But that one was more difficult for me because I was on my own.
Wow. Okay. So how about like in terms of the hostile? You did a Canadian embassy. There's so many things that you did. Can you talk about a couple of the things that you've done?
Yeah, so I was in the military. I loved my military career, and I'd reached the pinnacle in my career. I was working alongside like-minded individuals. I was doing a job. I was a lifer, as they say. I had no aspirations of leaving the military. Unfortunately, I then, on a pre-deployment training, on a high-altitude, high-opening jump, I had a parachuting accident, which changed my life from there on. I joined the military at 17. I was now 33, 16 years into my career.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So are you the longest person to ever be in this type of position?
No, not at all. A good friend of mine came over and visited me recently. He joined the military at 16. He's retiring next year at 55.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
At that level?
You can stay. You don't tend to be... When you progress in your career, you end more as a management role,
right,
or as we call desk jockeys.
Yeah.
They're the ones pulling the paper, but because of their experiences, they get involved in the planning. The door kickers, as we say, the guys in the Sabre squadrons, they tend to be the younger guys, and also whether you're still there. 8 people passed my selection. I think only 4 of us are still alive. You know what I mean? And there's guys that naturally get killed, guys get injured, and guys retire.
It's so dangerous, though. Like how, like you have to have how do you reckon with that in your brain, like what you're going to be doing, especially if you have a family, or do you have a family? Do most of these people not have a family at that level? I know you have a family now, but was it after the fact? Was it because I
met my wife towards the end, towards the end of my career. But I think Special Forces has a 95% divorce rate, and it's not because they don't love each other. It's just, and they have to remember that we're all volunteers. You're not told that you have to go Special Forces.
Right.
You volunteered for this,
and you want to do it.
You want to do it.
It's in your blood,
and it's the adrenaline rush, and it's what you signed up for. It's everything that these kids nowadays play Call of Duty. This is your day. Your day in, day out job. And I joined at the height of the war on terror, and it was the busiest time for UK and US Special Forces. So we were doing so many high profile jobs in a short period of time, which our peers before us have been waiting 10, 20 years for.
Right. And you're just doing one after the other, which I want to get into.
And there used to be a saying that, it's the one, this is the operation of the year. But the operation of the year, we were doing 2 or 3 a night from what they were doing before us.
What was the highest? Okay, so I'm jumping all over just because it's so fascinating to me. What was the highest profile thing? And then I want to talk to you about the injury that you had with the parachuting that you were kind of alluding to a few seconds ago.
So some of the highest profile things to me, I was fortunate to do the first ever operational jump for the SBS. And we did that in Afghanistan. We did a number of jumps after that. I did operational jumps to do hostage rescues.
Yeah. Did you do the after 9/11? You weren't involved with the Osama bin Laden thing, were you?
No, that was SEAL Team 6. So that's your tier 1.
Okay,
that's your tier 1, guys.
That's your tier 1.
That's
okay, so boys. You weren't there.
No. Well, I wasn't there on that one. But yeah, 9/11, going back to 9/11, just changed everything in regards to military and Special Forces. So when I'm talking about my peers, they were like pre 9/11. Everything after that was almost like an open book. It just changed, and as we've seen, the world has changed since. It's never been the same as pre 9/11.
Right
now, when you go to the airport, I can't imagine not having your bags checked.
I know, isn't that crazy?
And so that changed everything. 9/11, and it probably helped with recruiting. What you're finding now is Afghan's been shut 10 years. Every military is struggling with recruiting. because people joined because of what me and my friends were doing, and they're not seeing that anymore.
Wow. Why not though? Why are they not seeing it at all anymore in terms of?
Not at the same scale.
Right.
I generally, this is my theory, is that especially in UK, we have a war every 10 years. And unfortunately, there's money in war.
Yeah.
But also it keeps the recruitment up. So we had the Falklands War in the beginning of the 80s, 1982.
Yeah.
You had the first Gulf War in 1991.
Right.
9/11, 2001 for 20 years. And now we've got Ukraine. So every 10 years, every decade, there tends to be something.
How is that possible? So why do you think
that's
that is?
my theory. My theory
So
is for recruitment to keep, you need people to be coming through the gates. And you need to be combat ready because you soon lose that experience. A lot of the guys from my time are now out.
Absolutely.
And there's guys now have been in 10 years, 11 years, never seen combat. And it's not their fault. It's just they've not experienced that. And so you can't be experienced without experiences.
Yes.
That's one thing I say.
I know you say that. I love that saying. Yeah. It's so true.
And so we had so much experience in a short window of time, so much there, which can pass on for decades. But as those guys start retiring and leaving, so that's why there's guys like my friend staying until 55, because they had that knowledge and experience to pass on to those afterwards.
So do you think that it's planned? Like they are like governmentally organized every 10 years, or like it's kind of something that's part of, I don't know what happens in the back channels that we just don't know about.
I think it's my theory is the recruitment. There's money in war. Some of these ammunitions have shelf lives.
Yeah.
If you say, right, all that ammunition obsolete, that's billions of dollars of ammunition, or we could use it.
They have shelf lives?
Some of them have shelf lives. Yeah. So, and the equipment as well. And you have the new technology equipment. People need to get contracts. People,
Wow.
Yeah.
So who are the people who control this then?
Oh, I wouldn't know who they were, but
is it like another special ops group that we just don't know who they are?
No, not really. I think that we're in a world now where there's always going to be a threat. There's always going to be a threat, but it's how it's sort of interpreted to us. I generally, we only hear a small percentage of what's going on. I think if the world knew exactly what was going on, to be manic.
Do you guys find out and know more than we do, and then you guys are not so based on me, I'm like a regular civilian, right? You're not. So how much more of a percentage do you know what was going on when you were doing it versus the layman person
So when I was in the special forces, I was aware of serving, but actually then when as a private security operator, you're aware of other things as well, so I was doing more sensitive jobs as a civilian when I was in the special forces, because I had more freedom. I wasn't governed by a government.
By the government.
Yeah, by the government. Yeah. So I see more as well.
Would it be really surprising to people how much we don't know, basically?
Yeah, it'd be surprising. You see about these terrorist attacks that have been foiled and compromised, but there's a lot more that you don't see.
I know. What don't we see? Can you tell us can you tell us exactly what we don't see? Like what sort of things do we not see that we'd be surprised about? Keep it vague.
No, I know. Can't be vague. I can't really say. I can't say.
I can't say. But we would be surprised and shocked of how much we just don't know.
Yeah,
of what goes on.
There's certain ones that have been shown, you see on the news, but there's certain ones that you don't see, and they're not as bad as the ones that have been compromised. It's just if you knew the enormity of those that were in planning, I'm trying to think of the figure what it is, but I know the UK it costs millions and millions of pounds to have these people under surveillance, and it's like, why are you putting them under surveillance? It's like, because we need to know what they're doing. We'd rather be seeing them and keep an eye. And that's what we did in our role in the special forces. We never went out every day to fight the Taliban. Our role in the tier 1 special forces was to knock out the command infrastructure, those that are responsible for the funding, the planning, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right.
And when we were on target, we would gather information, get biometrics of those and identify what countries they've been to, who they've been visiting, and you're starting to build a bigger picture. So that's what we get involved with more in, yeah.
And then, okay, so we'll get into the security part, but we still haven't talked about that parachute and the highest profile thing that you were involved with. The Canadian Embassy, was that the most?
Yeah, as in the security. Yeah, that's one of them in the security one. Yeah,
that's security. Okay.
We'll go into that one though.
I want to get into that one, but do you want to first talk about the parachuting accident?
Yeah. So we'd already been to Afghanistan and done our high altitude, high opening jumps. We had some new lads that had just passed selection, and so they needed to do their hey ho jump. So our sergeant major's like, well, you guys, got the aircraft here, you guys do a fun jump. I never believe there's a fun jump in the military. Civilian, yes, there's fun jumping, but not in the military. So we were doing hey-ho jumps, and it was like third jump of the day. And I normally like to go at the front, and so I can turn around and face the plane and just mess about. But they moved me into the middle of the 16-man. But as I exited the aircraft, I've done hundreds of these jumps before. I soon realized there was the problem. Unlike halo skydiving where you're free of the lines, you're actually still attached to the aircraft. So as you exit the tailgate, you almost fall back into a seated position and the wind drags you forward. And you count to 5,000, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and you parachute, and then you look up and your canopy should be there. So that's what you normally do. As I exited the aircraft, my leg was caught in the line above my head. And so I have five seconds to clear my leg before the parachute opens. But I couldn't clear my leg in time, and it pulled my leg over my head and to the right. Thankfully, my ankle cleared the line and it didn't rip my leg completely off.
Hold on a second. Let me just get this straight. Your leg was stuck in the rope on top, and you had 5 seconds to take it off.
I had 5 seconds, and I'm frantically, and obviously you're going fast with the plane going that way, and yeah, my leg cleared, but it pulled my leg over, and the pain instantaneously. I knew I'd never experienced pain like it. I was vomiting because of the pain. It was that bad.
What happened? Where was your leg?
So my leg did release, and it was sort of hanging there now, but I just didn't want to touch it at all. But I also had to, because at 15,000 feet on a hey-ho jump, you still have to travel up to 30 minutes in the air to the target area, or 50 kilometers. And on 15,000 feet on the limits of oxygen, it's thin air. So I was also drifting in and out of consciousness. But still, as I was coming to, I could see the rest of the guys in my team. I was covered in vomit, but there's no point in me coming on the radio to them. We're all on comms and telling them I've got a bad leg, because there's nothing they can do. So my first problem is I need to land this, and it needs to be a good landing, because if I land it badly, there's risk of damaging my now one good leg. And so I watched the approach of the other parachutists, and I gauged my approach, and I landed it one-legged. It was a great landing, but unfortunately, the damage sustained, shortened my career. I tore my ACL, my MCL, my lateral meniscus, my hamstring, my calf, and my quadriceps. So normally you can tear your ligaments, and your leg would support it, but all the muscles had been torn as well. And so my friends all flew off to Afghanistan. It was the same time as remember the Icelandic volcano, which grounded all aircraft around majority of the world.
I'm still on this, what's happening to your leg. Okay, yes, I remember.
So I couldn't get a flight back to UK. So they just threw me in a hotel for 5 weeks on painkillers. And, my friends went one way to Afghanistan, and I got sent home. And I had to start the recovery process. But there was a whole spiral of errors then. They lost my MRI scans. And so for me, I was going through what was known as an identity crisis. I'd seen my friends going one way, and I was sort of told, you got to go another. And then, thank you for your time, but, you're no longer of any use to us. So for me, Alana, my wife, was trying to build me up. We were looking beyond the military, and without sounding like Liam Neeson, people with our skill sets tend to work in the security industry. Normally you would have a lead up time to leaving the military and make a plan for a career, but I didn't have that choice. And to sort of add to the pressure, Alana was 8 months pregnant by the time I left the camp gate. So I was wondering whether there was any work out there. How was I going to support my new family? What is my role within society? Really going through, and at the time I didn't see it, but on reflection, an identity crisis. I was having mental health problems, and I got to where I had in the military through my physical attributes, and now I couldn't even run 100 meters without my knee giving way. But thankfully for me, within 48 hours of leaving, a friend rang me. It was the Arab Spring in May 2011, and he said, "Look, I need you out in Libya." Gaddafi was now surrounded in Tripoli, and all these security companies, all these oil and gas companies, NGOs were now forming up in Benghazi. So I helped set up one of the projects with the British Embassy. But I soon identified that the Libyans didn't want to be in another Afghanistan and Iraq. They wanted to take control of the country once Gaddafi had fallen. So we were given weapons, but I never actually used them. I just kept them in the room, out of respect, because I sort of analyzed the threat, and there was no threat. But all these big companies, I call them the big five, I'll never name and shame, but they were charging 6-7-figure sums for crisis management and evacuation plans, which weren't actually in place. And as we've seen more recently in Afghanistan, they're still not in place. It's almost a paper exercise for some of these organizations. And so I flew back from that trip. Alana gave birth to Molly, and I wanted to find a niche within industry. I didn't want to be doing, a lot of my friends were doing the maritime security in Somalia. I didn't want to be competing with them. I didn't want to be going out to Afghan and Iraq on six-week rotations. I wanted to learn about the industry and sort of see where I could sort of exploit an area that needed assistance. And so there was a huge proliferation of weapons at the time in Libya. And so I went back in and I bought 30 weapons on the black market, and I buried them between Tunis and Egypt and just designed my own evacuation plans. Bought these large Pele cases, put communications equipment in there, a large amount of money and weapons. And I spent a month burying them in strategic locations between Tunis and Egypt border, near safe houses, which I'd located. And then I sold that to the oil and gas sector, hopefully never needing to use it. And I'm very fortunate for me. My wife Alana, you see people when they leave the military. Some people's transition can be quite smooth, and others is quite turbulent. Mine was smooth because of Alana. I'd gone from the military, like your mother, your father, they clothe you, they feed you, they pay you on time. You don't know who provides gas or electricity at camp. They deal with that,
Right.
So you can just concentrate on your job. And so Alana was a bank manager at the time, very entrepreneurial. She took all those responsibilities that the military normally did for me. And so I still don't know who provides the gas or electric as well. But the way I saw, I've come from an environment where, from the age of 17 to 33, when I'm planning missions and say, right, I need 2 Chinook helicopters, I need 40 guys, I need fast air, we need ammunition, we need it. No one gives me a bill.
Yeah.
No one gives me a contract or an NDA. And so I didn't know anything about the corporate world. But Alana picked that up for me. She ran the business.
Alana's his wife, by the way.
Yeah, Alana's my wife. She did all the business. She trained herself as a close protection officer, a surveillance officer, maritime. So unfortunately, she found out she was pregnant with Molly during her close protection course. But it meant when I was out on the ground that she could, if any inquiries came in, she could deal with them. But, again, very fortunate having Alana. I was doing ad hoc work. Each job I was doing was a different job. One phone call, can you go train the Kurdish special forces in Iraq? Next phone call, at the London Olympics. And so at a short period of time, I was finding myself going to new countries I'd never been to, some countries I had been to with the military, but was learning so much about the industry, the security industry, and seeing it from a different set of eyes. Because when you're in the military, you only see it from one set of eyes.
Absolutely.
And the intelligence that they tell you. And whereas actually now I was seeing a lot more that they didn't see. And actually we do a lot in the security industry as intelligence back to the special forces, because we can get to areas that they can't get to.
Can't get to.
And so, I was learning so much in a short period of time. And then in 2012, I just finished the London Olympics, and I was out in Benghazi, September 11th, 2012, when the American ambassador got killed. And I think they made a movie called 13 Hours on it. And I was there that evening, and I single-handedly got a German oil company from Benghazi to Tripoli through safe houses. And successfully. I mean, 2 years later, which leads to the Canadian embassy, I'm in Brazil, my client's visa, in a nice 5-star hotel, I was watching the World Cup, and I get a phone call from the Canadian embassy saying, your name keeps coming up, not a company name, everyone's gone, we need your help. So it was the Tripoli War. It was a civil war between the militias and the government, which had now really just sort of raised its head in around Tripoli. The Tripoli International Airport had been burnt down, and everyone has sort of shut shop and left. Unbeknown to the rest of the world, the Canadian embassy had done an assessment the year before, and it cost $20 million a year to run an embassy in somewhere like Libya. And all these embassies around the world are there for trade and investment, looking at opportunities when it sort of opens up. But Libya being the way it was and the downward spiral, it's going to be another 10 to 15 years before there's any sort of trade and investment. So the Canadians had made a decision that they were going to leave Libya, but they needed a window of opportunity to leave. So when the Tripoli War happened, everyone else shut shop and left at the early opportunity, but the Canadians were collapsing their embassy. They were shredding all their paperwork and stuff. So they were sort of caught behind.
Aye.
They had 18 military with them, and they would rotate every 4 months, their close protection, but they would fly in and out of Tripoli International Airport. But during their 4 months that they're there, they never left Tripoli. They went from their accommodation to their offices. So although Tripoli to Tunisia is only 100 kilometers coastal road,
right,
they'd not seen it. And so they hadn't had a look at or seen potential this scenario unfolding. And so I got the phone call. I went back in. I'd already evacuated a few people and actually put them in taxis. People were going.
How did you get back in? What did you do?
So I land in Tunis and I drive across the border.
Oh, you drove?
Yeah.
And then what did you do? Knock on the door? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, I turned up to their accommodation and showed and introduced myself to them. But we got a few people out the week before just in taxis. Everyone was rushing around and people were targeting the armored vehicles. So I was just doing it low profile. The British embassy got shot at the week before at every checkpoint between Tripoli and Tunis. So the Canadians were worried, and they still had 2 or 3 more days before, they could safely say that their embassy had shut down. And so this was worrying them. And so I had a fixer who was a 50-year-old internet shop owner from the UK. And, he's got no military experience, no private security experience, but he's from the tribes that would be passing through.
What is a fixer exactly?
So a fixer is someone who's from that country, a local. So normally when I go into countries, you can't really do anything about a good fixer. So he would have good knowledge, or she would have good knowledge of, if I need drivers, if I need accommodation, and things like that, and have a real understanding of what's going on in the country.
Okay.
So Libya, for example, has got 167 tribes. And so the problem is, if you have the wrong fixer or the wrong driver from the wrong tribe in the wrong area, that can cause you problems. And these are the sort of things that you need to think about. And so one of the reasons, I've been so successful in the industry, everyone sees in the special forces, 25% of what we do is offensive action is what they do in Hollywood. Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, the bombs, the biceps and bullets, the sexy bit.
That's what you actually look like, though, which is ironic, right? But you look the part.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
So, but actually 50% of what we do is support and influence. It's hearts and minds. It's understanding the demographics, the politics, the tribal influences, what's actually happening on the ground, not what's been told to you on TV.
You need a lot of emotional intelligence too, and like understanding like nuance. It's actually, you need to be. I didn't realize. Well, I did, but there's so many things. Like you need to be really bright in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you need to. My wife said, emotionally intelligent. She said my USP is that I can talk to anyone.
Yeah.
From any culture, any background.
I can see that about you even.
And I used to work on my own a lot as well. For me, I used to go to Yemen, Somalia on my own, and I stand out. But for me, it was like I'm just looking after myself. I'm not having to look after a team of 6 or 8.
Yeah.
And having to worry about their welfare or the way that they're talking talking to people, treating people. And so that's what would get me into certain places I couldn't before. So, it sounds very sexy in Hollywood, evacuating embassies, but actually that's what it was being able to understand the demographics and the tribal influences. So the British embassy got shot at the week before at every checkpoint. So me and my fixer, rather than go to the guys who are holding the weapons, we spoke to the tribal elders and we sat down with them and we had coffee and we shared lunch, and it was actually just showing them respect, let them know who we were. We were no threat, what our intentions were, when we were planning on doing it. And that's it. Yes, we may have palmed hands with a few $100s, but that's all they wanted was respect. And the British embassy had just decided to drive straight through. And so that's what the problem was. And so, got them out completely, used 2 fish wagons as well for all their specialist kit, because we couldn't get all their kit into the vehicles. And so I knew that the fish wagons daily would go from Tripoli to Tunis, moving the fish from Tripoli port. And so they know they're not going to get stopped at the border.
Right. Do you put the people on the fish wagon?
No, not just the equipment.
The equipment.
They stayed in their vehicles, but all
I'm watching too many movies.
Yeah. All their equipment was there, and it got straight through. And so really, it was just looking at it in a different way. I see security companies around the world, and they'll try and do it themselves. They'll go in with guys that look like me, 6 to 8 guys armed and in a sort of bullet, but you're only going to get so far. So for me, everywhere I work around the world, I try to use as many local people as possible and put food and water on their tables, because they are going to respect you. They're going to look out for you. They want the mission to succeed.
Right.
There's certain jobs that I can't give them, but as much as I can for them, I do. And so that's how I sort of differentiate for other security organizations.
But before the trends, like when you transition from after your injury to becoming the security guy that you are now, and of course the Guinness World Breaker, all that too. How long were you kind of like in a bad place mentally because it was such a transition for you to? How long were you down and out?
So from my injury, from leaving the military in May 2011 to July 2014 was the Canadian Embassy. So that 3-year period.
3 years.
I was out. I came home from the Canadian Embassy, and normally Alana washes my kit, and I charge my phone and I get ready for the next phone call.
Right.
We sat down that evening, and it was almost like a throwaway comment that I just evacuated the embassy, and we sat down with 2 bottles of wine, and Alana had highlighted to me that I'd only been home 21 days in a 365-day calendar.
21
days. I totally disconnected from society, and what I thought was normal wasn't normal. And so we then realized actually I was trying to match the adrenaline rush that I had when I was in the Special Forces without coming to terms with the fact that I'd left. I didn't have that support network. My friends weren't going to start parachuting out the sky to come rescue me. If it had gone wrong, it goes wrong bad. Luckily, so chapter 16 in my book is called Dead or Divorced. And this was the conversation me and Alana were having at this point. And so something needed to change. But it was also, Alana thought I wanted to go away, and I thought that she wanted me to go away to earn money. She was now a property developer, very successful, and I didn't need to go away. So it was just a lack of communication. We sort of misread each other.
Right.
And then when she told me, you said you can't be doing this anymore. So I took a sabbatical from the security industry at that point, and then started working with Alana in the property industry.
But wait a minute. So before you started that, like in 2011 was when you had your injury with your leg, right? Okay, when that happened, how long until you started to do all these private missions by yourself? Like
straight away.
Yeah, straight away.
Even
though you were mentally not.
Yeah, I was getting some jobs through other organizations, and then I soon started. It's a great network, the security industry. You know certain people.
But did you know already? Like I'm saying, like you weren't expecting to have that injury, right? Like that happened. You're like really shocked.
Yeah.
And then before, like, how long was the recuperation, first of all, to get back on your legs?
Yeah.
How long was
Well,
it?
it wasn't long at all. Actually, I talked about earlier, there's a spiral of errors with the medical stuff.
Right, you said that.
Yeah,
so.
I actually had to threaten the military to get me operated on before I left, because they were just dragging their heels. And so, we threatened legal action.
Wow.
And then got the operation. And then I already knew I was leaving. And they offered me physiotherapy, which was going to be another 3 months. I'm ready to go now.
Right.
So I didn't really have much physio. So after the Canadian embassy, this leg now was 2 kilos lighter than this leg because of the muscle wastage. I hadn't done any sort of cardiovascular exercise. I took a TRX with me now and then in and around the hotels, but nothing.
But wait, hold on. So so I thought the Canadian embassy was in 2014, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, your injuries in 2014 and 11.
11, yeah.
So between those 3 years,
Nothing.
Oh, you did nothing for 3 years.
I don't know, as in working on myself. As in my injury, you mean?
Well, yeah, no. The injury was how long? 6 months to get better? 8 months? A year?
I don't know. I got it operated on and I was out.
Oh, you were fine after that?
Yeah, I was fine, but I didn't do any physio because I just needed to work to support my family.
Oh, okay. So then that was my next question.
So
then you started to work into the private sector like 3 months later after the
straight
injury?
away, no, 48 hours.
Like 48, like literally? Like
so the injury, sorry, so the listeners, the injury was in 2010. I left in 2011 because there was a spiral of errors. They'd lost my med docs.
Oh, okay, so that was a year.
And so, it took so long for me to get out, but I wasn't operated on for nearly 10 months after the injury.
But after the operation, the recovery was only what?
It was only about a couple of weeks.
That was a question.
That was a question. Yeah,
that's crazy because that injury sounds like it would take 6 months to recuperate from.
And that's what I love the military. I love everything about the military, and I always promote the military. I learned so many skill sets from it. For me, unfortunately, it was a dark cloud that I left under. Is that my last sort of hurrah was arguing with them to get me fixed.
I know.
And actually, it wasn't until 5 years later when I had a tribunal hearing. I didn't get paid out on the right pension. I had to appeal and won a tribunal hearing against the military to finally get paid out. And so for me, I wasn't really aware how much it was affecting me until I won the tribunal hearing. I then felt like I'd been reciprocated for my time and everything else. But again, that was affecting my mental health. For me, I love the military, and I was like, I don't want to rock the boat. And Alana's like, no, rock the boat. You deserve this. And so,
do they pay you? Like, how much do you guys get paid to be in this special
forces? Oh, we don't get paid much at all. We, as a sergeant, we were probably 50,000, 60,000 pounds a year.
Okay, in American money,
probably about $75,000. Yeah,
and then. So when you left, you were making about $75,000 a year.
When I left, I was earning a lot more. Yeah, when I left the SBS, I was making that. Yeah.
And then, do they give you money for life, or do they just, or that's it? Like goodbye, see ya.
Yeah, it depends. If you've done your full 22 years, you get a pension, but your pension's not that great. I get now, I get it's about £1,200 a month tax free for the rest of my life. That's it. £1,200.
That's all.
That's it.
Wow! After everything you've done,
they did they had a group come in. I think it was accountants, and basically looked at the SAS and SBS, followed the guys on operations, looked at what they did, and said, "How much do you think we should be paying these guys?" And they're like, £250,000 a year each.
More.
I was like, "Yeah, we can't do that." Yeah, we can't do that. And so, we don't get paid a lot, but we don't do it for the money.
Right. You do
it for the adrenaline and for the job and, the job security, knowing that you are going to get paid at least each month if you do have a mortgage and things like that.
And if you get hurt like you did, then that's all you get for the rest of your life is these little pensions?
Until you
make a career.
To make a career, yeah.
Okay, and then what happens, God forbid if something happened to you, does your family get taken care of? Or not you, but does the person's family get taken care of?
If I was in the Special Forces and I got injured, then your family, we have the SBS Association, the SAS Association, that is their sole purpose is to be able to support family. And there's guys later on who may have hit hard times, and they're there to support them as well. So we do have something in the background should you fall on
hard times.
Hard times, yeah.
And then, okay, so then you transition into this like private security. Now, where does Prince Harry and Meghan, I have to ask you, right? And Meghan Markle come into this whole thing? Because, I know that you have a relationship with him.
Prince Harry came in actually 2007 when I was in the SBS.
Okay.
I was going out again on another Afghan tour. And I was going on a JTAC course, a Joint Tactical Air Controller, so a forward air controller. So your role within the team is to talk to the jets, to drop the bombs. And so I turned up at RAF Leman in Yorkshire, and it's the classroom's a little wooden hut at the end of the runway on an Air Force base. So no one in the Air Force cares about the military, right. It's in the Army or the Marines. But on this day that I turn up, every man and his dog's there from the Air Force. I'm like, that's strange. And I walk in the classroom, and there's 18 students, and the 4 guys at the back are Special Forces. There's 2 SBS guys and 2 SES guys, and we're students as well. And sat in front of me was Harry, and we're talking now 2007. So he's 23 years old. He's a young second lieutenant, and he joined a unit called the Blues and Royals, and they were going to Afghanistan, and he wanted to go to Afghanistan with them. But he couldn't just go. He needed to have a job title, a role, or a purpose. So his commanding officer was an SAS guy, and he said, well, look, go on the JTAC course. If you pass that course, then you could be the regimental JTAC. So that was his reason for being there. So this opening address, every man and his dog comes in, and, to get a bit of FaceTime with him. He then leaves the room. And we're then addressed by the course officer and sergeant major, and they said, look, who's on the course, gets no preferential treatment, treat him like one of your own. I was like, okay, perfect. So he comes back in, and the first lecture is on call signs. So on course, you're called Jackpot 1 to Jackpot 18, and that's so the pilot knows which student he's talking to. When you go to your unit, you have your own prefix call sign. So if I'm Mayhem 43, so SBS is Mayhem. And so Harry puts his hand up, and he's like, if I'm successful in this course, do I get a call sign? And I just blurted out, yeah, you're Fox Piss 1. I don't know why. Probably his ginger hair or whatever. And then, of course, you could see everyone's faces in shock. It's like, you can't say that. And then he looked round, smiled, and that was it then. Sergeant Major's like, you two are partnered off for the 6 weeks. And so we became close friends. And I saw his career, when he first went to Afghanistan, got compromised by the press. He came back. He then went on a flying course. And actually, I met him at Twickenham Stadium, me and my wife, Alana, and he just passed his flying course on the Friday. And he said, look, I need to make a decision on Tuesday what I fly. And I said, well, what is the choice? He said, well, Lynx helicopters, which is more like a glorified taxi driver for the generals, or AH-64 Apache gunships. And I said, and when we're talking to the Apache pilots in Afghanistan, they're called Ugly 1 and Ugly 2. And so I said, well, look, I tell the lads to go ugly early. I said, do what you want to do. Don't feel what you need to do for the public. You go. And so he rang me on the Tuesday and said, I'm going ugly. And so I like to think I sort of steered him towards that,
wow,
the Apache gunship. And then him and I did a lot in charity together. I used to be the SBS ambassador for Scotland, so he would sometimes come to some of the events that we would hold, and they're closed door events. You'd have the Prime Minister there, the England rugby team, and such. And I remember one evening they were auctioning this item. It was like a silver statue, SBS statue, and it went for like £40,000. And Harry's like, "Oh, that's amazing!" I was like, I know the bronze one was about £75. So I waited the following week, and I bought it, and I got it engraved, and I did his flying call sign. Congratulations on being ugly, Mayhem 43. And so we just kept that relationship.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
So you guys became like friends.
Yeah, friends. Yeah. And then when I worked in the private security sector, I had an intelligence fusion cell based in Mozambique and Tanzania for one of my precious stone clients. But we soon identified the smuggling routes from the stones from Africa to Asia, but it was the same smuggling routes as the ivory coming out of African continent to Asia. So every 3 months I would go to Kensington Palace, and I'd sit down with Harry and I'd sort of show him this information, and he would then disseminate that to the charities. And so we did a lot together behind the scenes.
Was he a nice guy? Was he? I mean, he's still here. Is he a nice guy?
He's a nice guy. Yeah. You know, I've met him, you know, you mentioned Megan now. I met him before I met Alana and before Megan. So I've known him
forever.
16
Has he
years
changed
almost.
since
He has changed. You know, I know he always wanted to be a father. You know, when his brother and Kate had, you know, his nieces and nephews, you know, you could see that. You could see that he wanted to be a father. So, you know, I'm pleased that he's got that. You know, but I saw him when he was in the military. It was the only time he could be as normal as possible, being someone from his background. You know, no one was judging him because he was a prince. You know, he was actually a good soldier, a good operator.
Was?
Yeah, he was a good officer. Yeah, he was very, you know, when you're talking to the pilots, he was very calm, you know, under pressure, and you know, he knew what he was doing. And so he was being judged on his soldiering skills, not on his other stuff. And that's where I saw him at his most relaxed.
So when this whole thing happened where they left the royal family, blah, 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 they moved to the US and they had no security, did you step in and become the security team?
So I got a message from him in February. And so me and my wife, we always wanted to move to America. And you know, my wife was a property developer, and we were just about to build our forever home in Scotland. And in December 19, we were like, well, hang on, you know, let's look at what we always wanted to do. And that was America. You know, we sort of blinked, and my daughter was 9 and my son was 4. You know, 10 years had flown by. So we put a pause on that. And then in February, but we didn't know where we were going to go in America. And then in February 2020, Harry stepped back from royal duties. So he messaged me, he said, look, you are the security guru. He said, can you have a look at this proposal which has been pushed to me? So I had a look at the proposal, and it was one of the big 5 I talk about.
Oh.
And so, but the problem with the big 5 is that not because they're the biggest doesn't mean they're the best, but they also have a lot of staff. They have a lot of overheads and things like that. So the price, you know,
gets super high. Yeah.
So I looked
How
at
much
this.
are these things about? Can you give us some prices?
So I'll tell you what the price was. So they started at 6.8 million a year.
For a year.
For
security.
For security, for 24/7 security. By the time I'd given my 3 pages of bullet points back, they dropped their proposal price by 48%.
No.
Dropped their proposal price, by 80% in 48 hours. I got it from 6.8 to 1.7.
Wow.
Which I still think is still quite low, 1.7, but they're the biggest private security company in the world, and they probably could have afforded to do it pro bono.
Wow.
And so, you know, and then we had March 20 and COVID hit. He then moved over. Me and my wife didn't come over till October 20, right in the middle of COVID, but he'd already had a security organization. So for me, I advise I don't get involved in the security.
But wait, is this the one that Tyler Perry was paying for?
Yeah, I think it was
Oprah
or
someone
I think it was Tyler. Someone funded it at the beginning.
Really, he couldn't pay for his own security. Really,
I don't think he knew where their income was coming from at the time. You know, it was all quite. Now they can.
Now they could afford more than just the security. They can afford way more than that. They're making deals left, right, and center. Apple, Netflix, here, there.
Exactly. So I think it was that. You know, it was that sort of transition period. They didn't know where they were going to be. You know, because we did see them all going to Canada. I mean, all of a sudden they pull it in LA, but they came to somewhere that which wasn't governed by the Commonwealth. You know, it wasn't their first choice. So
this wasn't their first choice?
No. I think New Zealand, South Africa, Canada.
Was it really?
And they're all part of the Commonwealth.
See, I assumed because of Meghan, she wanted to be in Hollywood because she was an actress, that they'd want to be here. No,
I don't think that was the case. No, I know, having known Harry for so long, Africa is where his heart is. You know, Africa is where he loves. This wasn't their first choice.
They left anyway now, right? Didn't they leave?
Leave.
The California? Didn't they just go back to
They're still here.
England?
No, they're still here, probably for a visit. No, they're still in Montecito.
Oh, they are still.
Yeah, they're still in Montecito. But for me, with the security one, it's interesting because I bump into, the jungle drums. Back in UK, I was at a show in Vegas, the SHOT Show, the largest gun and ammunition show. And there's a lot of law enforcement and special forces, and guys are like, "Oh, I see you're running Prince Harry's security," and I was like, another guy's like, "You're running Elon Musk's." I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm actually doing neither."
Yeah, you're not. I heard you were running Harry and Meghan's.
Yeah, no, I advise, but the reason I don't, because we want to keep the. I've come in on a couple of occasions and been to sort out, because the problem you get is companies will come in. And they'll win the contract. They'll get their feet under the table, but the standards won't be maintained. You need to maintain that quality control.
Yeah.
But they're winning contracts on the back end of who they're providing.
Oh, okay.
And so there's been a couple of occasions where I've come in and I've had to sort of, as a third party, not getting paid, which is really important as well. When you're not getting paid, I can say what I want and highlight certain points. But for him and I, we've always wanted to keep that professional and personal relationship distant. There was an occasion where I thought I was going to have to potentially come in during a transition period and go with them on a trip. But he rightfully said, you can't, because in the past I've openly defended him on TV interviews and radio interviews back in UK, especially when he was stepping back from royal duties.
Yeah.
If I was then working on a professional capacity, it would discredit everything I've said in the past to him.
Yeah.
And so which is interesting, because he probably would love me to be there, but it has to be aesthetically, what does it look like?
Exactly. Perception is I would imagine in that level.
Exactly.
So it's so important.
So important. But for me, I get the kudos of being able to be his security advisor or offer him advice or problem solve. That's where I come in. And that's what I do now, is I tend to come in and problem solve. Sometimes it might be, a lot of people have these security companies, and it's quite expensive to take a whole company out and replace it.
Totally.
Well, actually, why don't we just come in and train them up? You know what I mean?
Oh, so you can train the security.
We can train them up, yeah. So the big difference I'm finding here in the US and the UK. So the UK, we have the Security Industry Authority. So if you work in the security industry, you have to have done a course, whether you're in manned guarding, close protection, surveillance, you have to have done a course which is recognized by a governing body. So it's reached certain criteria and standards.
Right.
So you have a baseline.
Right.
What you have here in the US is you don't have a baseline. You can do an online 8-hour close protection course, get a concealed carry, and that's you in the security industry. So you have everything from excellent to really poor. There's no baseline. And so that's the problem you've got here. And so what I'm trying to do is sort of introduce that baseline. This is the baseline, or train people up. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So then who can you talk about that are some of your clients that I would know? You don't have Elon Musk. You don't have Harry now that you cleared cleared up that rumor.
I don't work with celebrities.
No. And does it have to be just anything, like in terms of like, you said Visa or
Visa, more your Visas, your Halliburton's, your oil companies, KPMG, and it tends to be more the board level sort of coming in, and also doing crisis management. Where my specialties lie is the crisis management, the evacuation plans. Me and my
it sounds like it.
Yeah, like when the Afghanistan thing all kicked off.
Yeah,
we ended up getting 1,200 people out of Afghanistan, and
that's
none
amazing.
of them were my clients. It's just because people had heard about my story. But what you have is in the security industry, you have your insurance companies, and actually, again, the big five. Two of the big five in Afghanistan didn't realize they weren't insured for Afghanistan until it was needed. But they're getting retainers from their clients. And so we were picking up clients that weren't ours originally. But the insurance companies sometimes would call force majeure. There's a lot of lessons learned from Afghanistan. And I'm now working with some insurance companies and they're changing their model as well. But some would call force majeure. But again, some of these corporates need to look at the small print, what they actually covered for and what they're not covered for. And they sort of tend to find out at the wrong time. But you can get an aircraft into Kabul, that's part of the insurance thing. But what they don't do and what we specialize in is the first mile, how you're going to get from A to be.
Yeah.
And that's not covered in the insurance.
Wow.
And so that's where me and my team sort of tend to come in, is we look at, because once you're at the airport, that's fine. It's just paperwork. It's getting you from that point to that point there.
Is that the lion's share of how you make a living now, is through private security?
Yeah, I had a phone call a couple of months ago with the head of CIA station for Yemen. And he's like, I've just Googled you. And he said, you're a cyclist. I was like, look, there's two Dean Stotts. I said, there's the one that's doing, some TV, some books and guest speaking. I said, but that's the side hustle. My passions are in the security.
Yeah.
So although people will see, Google Dean Stott, I'm probably not the person who's smuggling people across borders anymore and burying weapons, but I still have access to those that can do that. And so for me, I'm always trying to put work to my friends that are leaving the military.
Yeah.
Because I understand that transition period they're going through is difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Because you went through it.
I went through it, yeah. And I've now just aligned myself with the Honor Foundation in America, which is a non-profit, which is a transition program for special operators from to civilian street, because I can relate to that story. So it's maybe not so much me, but it is working. Some of these media profiles is helping. I had the Cambodian government get in touch with me on LinkedIn because they'd heard me on Jocko's podcast talking about the Canadian embassy.
Right. That Jocko, that one like crushed it for you.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah. That was a big one. And a surprise, because I'd never heard of Jocko until about a week before.
I guess I know. What's interesting is in America here, he's one of the more popular Navy SEALs because he went on Joe Rogan a bunch, and he's friends with this guy named Joe. Do you know who Joe Rogan is?
I know who Joe Rogan is. Yeah.
But you were saying also, like, he's tier 2.
Yeah.
So for you to be tier 1, like, to him, like, that's like a big, that's where the respect level comes in, right? Because you're like, to him, to everybody, I guess, but like, you're next level.
Yeah, I think you automatically have respect for anyone from any nation on what they've done.
Exactly.
And what they've done. So there's all that automatic sort of bond. Before I went down on Jocko, I say I don't listen to podcasts. I don't. And it was quite interesting because Jocko, when I chatted to him offline, he said he likes you to talk about yourself. He doesn't want you referencing podcast, whatever. So a lot of my friends were saying, "Oh yeah, he's hardcore. He's intense." And I met him outside his gym, and he just gave me the biggest man hug, and I was like, "Okay, this is good. This is going to be fine."
Intense, to me, he's not even.
Yeah,
exactly.
So that was nice, but yeah, you automatically have respect for those. But the thing is, with tier 1, there's a lot of the guys in tier 1 like to still stay in the shadows. There's not many tier 1s out there.
That's what it seems to me.
Yeah, and for me, I was always in the shadows. I turned down TV opportunities, but it was only when I did my bike ride that my head then popped above the parapet, and that's when people then realized who I was. I was happy to stay
under the radar,
smuggling people across borders. When people approached me about TV, it just didn't align with me at the time. They went on to be great TV programs, but for me, it just was the wrong time.
Well, two things to that. Number one, what he's referring to is he broke the world record in you drove your bike the Pan Am Road,
Pan American
Highway in record time. Was it 99 days that you did that in?
Yeah. So it's the world's longest road, which runs from southern Argentina to northern Alaska. 14,000 miles, 2 continents.
Wow.
But I'd only ever cycled 20 miles before I applied for the world record. Alana, when I was working within the property industry, as we've heard some of my backstory, she could see that I was bored, and she I didn't want to be smuggling people across borders. So she said, you need to do something to keep yourself physically and mentally engaged. So I just bought a push bike, because this leg was 2 kilos lighter than this, but only 8 miles there, 8 miles back, but straight away that cardiovascular, getting those lungs going, I felt there was almost like a weight off my shoulders. I was getting that identity back, that those physical attributes that I'd sort of lost with my injury, which
is part of who you are,
which is part of who I am. And so I know I can't run anymore, but I thought, well, cycling's good. So I said, look, I fancy doing a world record. It was about a month before my 40th birthday. And Alana actually found the world's longest road. So I joke when I say she wanted me out of the house. And so I applied for the world record, and Guinness came back, 6 weeks later, said, you've been successful in your application. So I don't mean to ever to sound arrogant. I know I talked about earlier, you can only be experienced of experiences. I knew I had the mental fortitude and resilience and endurance from my time in the special forces. I just had to apply that in a sport I'd never done before. And so I just took a military set of orders, put it on this project, and just crossed out ammunition and just planned the whole project. Lana and I planned it. But I needed to do it for, my objective was for me to keep cycling each day and to get out was the world record. I have to have it's a military thing. You have to have a mission or an objective. So mine was the world record, and that's why I applied for that. We then spoke to Harry. I rang him up. I said, look, I'm going to cycle the world's longest road. What should we do it for? And him and his brother and Kate, again, before Megan was on the scene, were about to launch a campaign called Heads Together, which focused on mental health. And I'd seen mental health issues in the military, but I wasn't aware how big it was throughout the whole society, postnatal depression, young children, teenagers, veterans. And so I said, yeah, that's the perfect campaign message. And so we had the campaign, we had that. Harry introduced me to the Royal Foundation, sat down with them, and they're like, how much are you looking to raise? Set a target of £1 million, because I wanted to keep them at the table. I didn't want to just collapse their folders and walk out. But then the second question was, look, what is you all trying to promote with this challenge? And I hadn't really thought about it. And I then looked internally and I said, well, physical activity helps your mental state. Mm-hmm. No. This was 2016. They said, no, you can't use that. I said, well, why not? And they said, because it's not been scientifically proven. I said, that's fine, but I don't need a scientist to tell me that I feel good. And so I ignored them anyway. And as you know, now one of the coping mechanisms for mental health is physical activity.
Not only that, they say it's better that if working out is better for your if you're depressed or have anything or anxiety. It's better than anxiety medication. It's better than depression medication. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of research now.
There's tons of research now. I guest spoke at on Mental Health Day at Scotland Rugby and Scotland Football, and the doctor came up to me afterwards. I did a presentation, slammed down this big folder and said, there's all the evidence you need.
Exactly.
So I'm glad that I continued banging that drum. And so, I went to planning, trained for a year. Alana ran the whole campaign. She got me fundraising. She managed to get me £500,000 sponsorship as a non-cyclist. And we went on. I broke the world record by 17 days. I did it in 99 days and became the first man in history to do it under 100 days. At the age of 41. But I was trying to prove to people it's never too late to start a sport, but also be good at it. A lot of people can be, I was chatting to a group of cyclists, and I remember the woman saying that when she first turned up to a cycling club, it was almost like her first day at school. Everyone was in their little groups and she just felt intimidated, didn't know where she sort of fitted in. And and it is a bit like that. And so for me, I just see, you take away the lycra, take away the helmet, and actually it's just individuals on a bike. But it's
amazing
that it had its challenges. I spoke to the previous record holders. They started in Alaska and finished in Argentina, but all their issues were in South and Central America. Bit of bureaucracy at the borders, languages, spares for the bikes. So being the military guy, I was like, well, why would you not address those issues early? Why would you not get them out the way?
Yeah.
Because one of the things we do in the military, one of the reasons one of the best in the world is because we're always learning from our mistakes. And I still do this now in business as well, is we would do what's called a hot debrief. So every time we came off the ground, before we go clean our weapons, have food or do anything else, we would discuss what we'd just done. And the three questions were, what worked, what didn't work, and if we were to do that again, what would we do differently? So we're always sort of evolving. We're always evolving our tactics. And so I asked the previous record holders that, and the information I got was that all the issues were in South and Central America. So one of the things I was quite proud of is actually, just because everyone did it that way didn't mean it was the right way. And I turned it on its head and started in the South and headed north. But I love
that. I think that is such an important message, because people just think that because it was done before, that's the way they should do it.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily or usually what you should be doing.
No, don't follow it. Just because everyone's going that direction doesn't mean it's the right direction.
100%.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so we got to, wow. I took 10 days off the South America world record. My decision to go south to north was a good decision from a cycling perspective. We had issues. I crashed the bike into a sign in Chile. I got food poisoning twice in Peru. Got knocked off my bike in Colombia. But from a cycling perspective, I was getting a tailwind for the majority of South America.
Oh, wow.
Which is great, which is
great
helping
for you.
me.
Yeah.
But on the logistics perspective, it was slowing us down. You could get a vehicle from Alaska to Argentina as long as you crossed the Darien Gap. But coming up, we had to swap the vehicles at every border crossing, which was slowing us up. So we bought a 4x4 and an RV in Fort Lauderdale, and it was going to get shipped to Panama. And then once we flew from Cartagena, we'd pick up the keys, and those vehicles would take us all the way to Alaska. So Alana's running the whole campaign. She rings me when I'm in Ecuador, about 2 weeks out from Cartagena, and she said, "Look, I've had a phone call from the shipping company. The vehicles haven't been loaded onto the container. They're stuck in Fort Lauderdale." I said, "Okay." She goes, "Look, leave it with me," as Alana does. She tries to keep all the distractions away from me.
She sounds pretty amazing. This
Yeah,
Alana.
she is. And so my wife...
Can I borrow her? She
Yeah.
can be like, it sounds like she's like a big brain, the brains behind this whole
she's the one
project.
behind the scene. Yeah, definitely. So her and my PA and two of my friends had foresight, and they flew over to Fort Lauderdale. I had a sit-down protest till they could release the vehicles. And they drove the vehicles 4,000 miles in 8 days from Fort Lauderdale through Mexico, all the way through Central America. So I broke the world record in Cartagena in the morning, took 10 days off that world record, flew over at noon. Alana and the team came in an hour later, handed over the keys, and we continued. So the reason I make that apparent is because we talk about the special forces. We have a number in the UK for every tier 1 special forces operator to step out of a helicopter, jump out of a plane or dive. It takes 7 other people you don't see, 7-to-1 ratio. And so it's the importance of having a team around you. And it was actually that team that made it successful for me. As Alana jokes, I had the easy job. All I had to do was cycle the bike.
Right.
And so we get into Del Rio in Texas on day 70, and I'm 14 days ahead of this world record. And I'm like, perfect. I can take the foot off the gas. We're well within time. And I within an hour of getting in Texas, I had 5 missed calls on my phone from Alana. And so, again, I've talked about how she keeps all those distractions away from me. So my initial thought was there was a problem with our children. So I ring her and I said, "Look, are you okay?" And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "What do you wear to a royal wedding?" I said, "Sorry?" She goes, "What do you wear to a royal wedding?" I said, "I don't know." And she goes, "Well, we've been invited to Harry and Meghan's wedding." I said, "Oh, that's nice." She goes, "No, you don't understand. You need to be finished by day 102. So going into the phone call, I was 14 days ahead of the world record. 10 minutes later, I'm now a day behind. And so I had to change the way that I cycled in North America to try and get in time for this wedding. So my mission, my objective was still there. It just the timing had changed completely. So I got into Lubbock. The next day we had 60-mile-an-hour winds and tornadoes. And there's an app on your phone called Windy TV, and it gives you like the strength and directions of the winds. And so I was now 2 days behind. And so I just put pen to paper. I had to cycle 340 miles in the next 36 hours to miss the next weather window. In South America, because of the security issues, we had to be off the road at night. So I'd cycle from first light to last light, and then for security reasons, be off the road. In North America, we had the luxury of being able to cycle at night. So the majority of my cycling was done at night in North America. And I was playing chess with Mother Nature, with the winds, but also using it to my advantage. I got to Cheyenne in Wyoming and got a 50-mile-an-hour tailwind and cycled 270 miles in 11 hours. And so we had 17 days planned for North America, and I did it in 11 and a half days.
Oh,
and so
my God.
I gained all that time.
And made the wedding.
But again, I then had another hurdle. I got a week outside, and I was in a town called Whitehorse, and I was eating as much McDonald's as I could because I was losing weight. And my friend messaged me and told me about a professional cyclist, young 26-year-old lad. He's already got 3 endurance world records, sponsored by Red Bull, all the big brands. He'd come out on social media that day and said he was going to be the first person to do it under 100 days. And so for me, I just wasn't comfortable in sort of resting on what I'd achieved so far. And so I cycled for 22 hours in the last 30 hours in minus 18 to come in.
Minus 18?
Minus 18.
Stop it.
Yeah, we had everything from plus 47 degrees centigrade in the Atacama Desert to minus 18 and everything in between. And that was the attraction about the challenge for me. It wasn't just cycling in one environment. You're being pushed through different environments, seeing different cultures, different countries. And so, and I came in 99 days, 12 hours and 56 minutes. It wasn't the original plan to do under 100 days. It's just how things had sort of unfolded on the challenge. If I'd known about
the guy
or Harry's wedding at the start,
what did the guy do, by the way?
He beat my world record.
Damn,
yeah.
What did he get?
I think he got like 88 days. He smashed it. Yeah.
88 days.
Damn
yeah.
Him. But I met him in Vienna and we went cycling together and, but he said, look, you are the first man to do it 100 days, but I'm not a cyclist, for me.
Oh, and he was a cyclist.
Oh, he's been cycling all his life.
So it doesn't count. You can't count that then. I don't count. You're still the number one.
But what was comfortable for me, what was really comforting for me was that he was going to go a slightly different route.
Right.
And then when him and his fiance and his team were following me, they chose my route. They said, your route was perfect. You planned it perfectly. He got a police escort through Mexico. I didn't have the luxuries of that. But will records are there to be broken. For me, I dipped my toe in cycling.
Right, you've never done it before.
I've never done it. And for me, but what was more impressive was Alana raised $1.3 million for mental health along the way as well.
Amazing.
With every penny going to them because our sponsored covered all the additional costs.
That's amazing. The last thing I wanted to ask you about was that I heard that you're doing a docu-series on your life or things that kind of are similar to your life. Is that true? Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I've been approached to do a docu-series. It's more military based, so it's in my lane. It's not a gardening show or a baking show. So it's something I'm comfortable talking about. So we're in process of filming that. It's under embargo, so I can't disclose too much. But it's going to be exciting. Something I'm looking forward to doing.
When is that supposed to be kind of out to be?
I think that will be out towards the end of this year. That's the plan.
What made you decide, and this is the last thing, and then I'm going to wrap you up because it's been, I don't even know how long, hours. What made you decide? You said you didn't want to ever do TV. The first kind of like thing that you ever did in the media was the world record of what's it called?
Pan American Highway.
Why now? Why did you decide now?
So once I did the Pan American Highway, I didn't look beyond the Pan American Highway. I didn't see a career in guest speaking or books. I did it so I wasn't smuggling people across borders. I literally only just started social media on the campaign. And so my head had popped above the parapet. I spoke to the MOD. They loved what I was doing because I was putting the military in a good light.
Yeah.
And so all these other opportunities arise. And my next challenge I wanted to do was kayak the river Nile. It's never been done before from source to sea.
Oh, wow.
And originally we started planning and then COVID hit. Then we moved over here. And then when I sort of brought it back to the table, it doesn't matter how many millions you've raised for charity or how many world records you got. The feedback I was getting was how many Instagram followers you got. I was like, really?
Yeah.
This unfortunately is the society that we're in. And so for me, these other TV opportunities then arise. And I thought, well, let's put that to the side then. And let's focus on building the profile. Let's do these TV shows. Let's raise that profile so people know who you are, hear your story. But then what I can then do is then bring the Nile Challenge back. Then that helps with sponsorships, helps with TV, but also from a fundraising aspect, more people, more eyes on it, and then we can potentially raise more money. So that's the difference for me.
This is so crazy to me. Like someone like at your level, and they're still haranguing about Instagram and social media followers. It's so insane. Like what our world is these days. Like it doesn't matter what you do offline.
Yeah.
If you're visible to a bunch of yahoos online. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. It bothers me.
But I think you have to also be authentic as well. I'm learning a lot, but I understand the benefits of social media.
Okay,
I can see it. But for me, and Alana has a go at me about it, I still have imposter syndrome. I can do TV and things like that, but I struggle talking to my phone. I don't know if it's the humility thing or whether it's just something new to us. But But I as long as I'm true to, I'm organic, I'm true, I'm authentic.
Totally.
And there's been opportunities before. I could have taken the easy route and gone on TV and made millions because my friends who who did that. And so for me, I was always conscious of what the Special Forces community thought about what I was doing. And I've always been mindful of that. But now I have this sort of blessing after the bike ride and stuff like that. I feel like, but it's been 10 years since I've left now, or 12 years. And so for me, it's like, that is my past, this is my new life. But, trying to find the balance, security is where my skill sets are. I like to help people, whether it's in philanthropy or in security situations.
And okay, well, the guys, this book is called Relentless. You look like you're still like 28 with that body. How often do you work out? Every day?
I try not to work out every day. What I'm trying to find is a yin and yang balance. But what I tend to do is I have like a pull-up bar in the house, and so every time I walk under the door, I do pull-ups. I do pull-ups. I don't allocate an hour to do training, but I know by the end of the day I've probably done 10 sets of 15 pull-ups or 10 sets of 50 press-ups. But you're doing more than just 15. What is someone? I know I said I was going to wrap it, and now I'm going to go into a whole other freaking litany of stuff. But no. Okay, so you don't look like that from just doing like some push-ups when you're like walking outside underneath the door. Yeah. What else are you doing? Like, give me your regimen. Do you take supplements? What do you eat? Are you like a carnivore? Are you a vegetarian? No, I'm a carnivore. It's quite interesting about the nutrition. I got approached by all the big cycling brands when I was doing the bike ride, but I was 40 years old, and for me, again. I'm only now learning about nutrition and the benefits of nutrition, the science behind it. When I joined the military in 1995 and I was the gym instructor, the exercises and stretches we were doing are all illegal now.
Right. Really?
Because there was no science behind it. But for me, I've always seen food as fuel. Yeah. And so I would eat whatever. So, and at the age of 40, you're already developed anyway. But Alana she was looking at sports nutritionists and they just weren't getting me. So she trained to be a sports nutritionist herself. So she, she couldn't find anything that had enough calories for what I needed.
You guys are hilarious. So we couldn't figure out what to eat. So I just my wife became a sports nutritionist because that's what everybody does. And they become a property developer because that's how and then we become a this, we become a that.
Yeah, she's out now.
An author. I know the books.
She's now sat the bar. She does, if people don't work to her standard, she'll learn that job and do it herself. So she's now studying law because she doesn't want to pay for solicitors.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no.
I want her on the podcast.
Yeah, and she's found her passion now in writing. She's incredible. And sort of going back, she's just been honoured on the New Year's Honours List. So we go back to UK in 4th of July, and King Charles is going to give her MBE for supporting vulnerable women and mental health awareness.
It's amazing.
So yeah, it's great that she's been recognized for everything she does behind the scenes.
Totally. It's incredible. She sounds incredible.
Yeah, but I genuinely believe, and I never mean to sound arrogant about this, I genuinely believe that anyone can break a world record if someone is looking after the business, the children, the mortgage, and all I've got to do is train for what I need to do.
I love that you said that earlier because I think that I don't think anybody's self-made. I think everybody needs a really strong team behind them to do it. And when people don't give credit where credit's due, it's a real pet peeve of mine because what you said, to your point, when one person's jumping out of that parachute, it takes 7 other people to make that happen properly and safely. And I think it's very, I don't know. I think it's a really nice quality that you give credit where credit's due because a lot of times people just, pound their chest and they don't say these things. And I think it's a really important thing to realize that we all need a village to be successful. To be a good mom, you need to have a nice support system. To be a good anything, you need to have people around you who are supporting you to do that job.
Yeah, it's true. I see people. I mean, me and Alana always look behind them. Well, who's enabling them to do that? And it's not just famous people or sports people. It's like the military. A lot of these wives had to stay back while the guys away, look after the family and support them. In most relationships, one will sacrifice so the other does well.
It's true.
Females always end up being the one that's pregnant.
Exactly.
I mean? So their career's always put on pause. So I'm mindful of that. And I always, when I speak to people, I try to identify who's the team behind you, who's enabled you to get to where you are. Because I do see people and I'm like, you mentioned a couple before, and it's like,
give me a
it's their
break.
wives.
100%.
Their wives.
I think, especially in the business that, what I do here, I have a lot of people who are super, super successful. I talk to all the time. And when you really, peel, kind of see what happens behind the curtain, or like peel the layers back, it's like, okay, like this is why this has happened for you. You know what I mean? It's not just because you're extraordinary. It's because people have helped support you and do this. And it's not just, like to be relentless and to do these things, you need to have people who allow you to be relentless in other areas, to take care of your life in other areas.
Yeah. And I think also knowing your team, knowing the strengths and the weaknesses. Like Alana can't ride a bike. I taught her to ride a bike during COVID.
She'll learn. She'll become the next Lance Armstrong.
But I know nothing about business contracts, NDAs. Alana, so we know our strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly.
I'm the sociable character. I'm the one who can open doors and things like that. I mean, Alana's almost like, as she calls the bitch that comes in with a contract afterwards.
Listen, it's a partnership. It's a team. It's a partnership. Well, you know what you're good at. She knows what she's good at. Or whatever, and you lead on those strengths. That's what it's about.
Yeah, but I struggle because I came from an environment in the military where you trust the person next to you with your life.
Yeah.
And you believe that they have the best interest in you. And when I came out into the corporate world, I thought everyone was the same. and Alana's like, no, that's not the case.
No, that's naive.
That's naivety. Yeah. And so she would see through that, and she would, she's seen people take advantage of my goodwill, and I was trying to explain earlier on. I was chatting. Is like, we don't. No one gives us a bill when we're in the military, when we plan these operations. And some of the stuff I do now is, and in the special forces, they're there to rescue life.
Yeah.
And so I don't see a price on life. And so there's been occasions where, the Canadian embassy, I only charged $7,000 because I couldn't be bothered waiting for it to get cleared. We didn't have time.
Right.
Whereas, and then afterwards, it's hard to then say, this is what it's worth.
Yeah, 100%.
And so Alana sort of puts it in that, I just think about saving people when actually she said the monetary value.
100%. You got to monetize. You got to like put food on the table.
Got to put food on the table. Yeah. But for me, is like, I also don't like to see, and I see some of these big security companies, especially like Afghanistan, really taking advantage of a bad situation and charging.
Totally.
And it's like, no, you shouldn't take advantage of that. And it will come back tenfold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a time and a place for that.
100%. Dean, this has been so interesting. I'm so happy that you actually finally got you on the podcast. This was really fascinating. Can you just tell people where they can find you, since now you want to now you're on social media? So what are your handles, or where do people find out more about you, get your book, all the things?
So I am on social media, believe it or not. It's Dean Stott for Facebook and Instagram. I have a website, www.deanstott.com, and you'll see some of my future projects on there. You can buy the book on Amazon, but you can also buy it from my website, and $5 of each book from my website goes to the Honor Foundation.
Love it.
Which is the transition program for the Special Forces. So still trying to do my piece for the veteran community.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dean. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Habits and Hustle. Please watch another video here and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already by pressing the button below.
Jennifer Cohen, visionaries, tune in, you can get to know them. Be inspired, this is your moment. Excuses, we ain't having that. The Habits and Hustle podcast, powered by Habit Nest.